Okay, so I lied. Kill me. Sue me. Whip me. I promised in the title of this that I was going to reveal the one factor which would guarantee success for you in weight loss and in any other endeavor. But unfortunately, there is no one quality or characteristic that will do that. What we're doing is we're playing the odds here, right? Success is always a confluence of events, and if they come together right, then you will succeed. But which is the one factor that will give you the best chances? That's what we're going to discuss today. Good morning, people. Good morning, FinTexters, Nutrimonsters. Hope everyone's doing great. We are marching towards July 4th. We're going to have to talk about schedule regarding July 4th and the weekend. But let's get into what I wanted to talk about. How many of you go down YouTube rabbit holes? Show of hands. All right. Or maybe it's not a rabbit hole per se. Maybe you just start watching something and, before you know it, 6 hours have passed and you've seen several videos on the same subject and you know a lot more than you did. This is the best of the internet. This is what it's for. It's the world's greatest ever communication device. At its best, we can scratch every itch that we have as soon as it comes up. We could find out, like I did the other day, about foundations when you're building skyscrapers. I knew nothing about that subject. I never thought I wanted to know anything about that subject, yet now I know at least a little something, and it can be fascinating. So the other thing that I got involved with this weekend that I started watching was there are a bunch of these content producers and they are vocal coaches and they make videos that are critiques of vocal performances. And I got so into it to where now I subscribe to, I think, 3 of them. The funny thing is I can't sing. You don't want me to. I can't sing. I have no training in it. I know little about it technically. And yet I sat transfixed for hours watching these videos from these different vocal coaches. And they are very democratic with what they look at, right? They're not as snotty as what you think. You think they'd be doing just opera and Broadway stuff. And they do that. But they will do also hard rock. You might notice I'm wearing a Led Zeppelin t-shirt today. Okay. They will, they'll critique Led Zeppelin and Robert Plant's vocal performances. They will critique, these hard rock bands like Motorhead, or it's hard for me to even remember, some of them, but they'll do it. And pop songs. And basically, they generally take recommendations from their audience. And if the audience repeatedly request something, then they will check it out. So, you'll get a lot of Boston because the lead singer from Boston, Brad Delp, was one of the great rock vocalists of all time. And you'll get Pearl Jam because Eddie Vedder was so amazing, and you get things like that. But you get the point. But it's just incredible. Why did I get so into it? I'm asking myself, why am I so into it? And the answer is the vocal coaches. They are essentially these musical nerds, and they do get into technique, things that I don't understand that well. What's the difference between tremolo and vibrato? I don't know. I don't know scales. I don't know, a lot of the things they're talking about. They talk about using chest voice as opposed to like, I don't know, nasal voice or head voice or whatever the hell they're talking about. I don't understand the differences necessarily, but I start to, as they're discussing it. They're very descriptive. They're very intelligent. I say they, right? I mean, as a generalization, for some reasons, vocal coaches are very intelligent. I think because they have to conceptualize and make people understand how to execute these various different techniques and ways of singing, all towards the end of not only a good technical performance, but a performance that moves the audience, a performance that has an effect. That is the job of an artist. It's to have an effect on the emotions of the listener, whatever that effect might be. So they get into that and how the different techniques relate to that. And it's just amazing to listen to. But one of the things that I love about it is how these vocal coaches are just so full of admiration for the performers. You would think that they would be so critical that it wouldn't even be enjoyable. But they're not. They're the opposite. I mean, they are critical. They're critical about technique. They're critical. If someone stinks, then they'll let you know that. But if a performance is good, their admiration, not only don't they hide it, I mean, they're like over the top about it. I mean, they will, start crying and laughing and giggling and clapping and saying, "Oh my God, it's so good." There's something about that grabs you. Now, this weekend, I also delved into something that I delve into relatively often, which is baseball. And I apologize to some of you who don't know much about baseball. Much of my client base and audience here is female. That does not mean they're not baseball fans. But again, if we're playing the odds, I'm going to assume, and this is based on experience, and I know this is something we don't talk about these days, but based on experience, baseball references will land better with male Americans than it will with females. Europeans, forget about it. For the most part, they don't know what the hell you're talking about. Very difficult to explain a game that you grew up with people who did not grow up with it. But I'm watching baseball videos. I'm watching an interview with Ted Williams. I talked about Ted Williams before. I am supposed to hate him. He is a Boston Red Sox. And by the way, if you're just tuning in now, I know I'm supposed to say this, tell you what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the most important quality if you want to succeed in weight loss or anything else. I haven't even gotten to it yet, but I'm about to, because I'm listening to this interview. Bob Costas interviewed Ted Williams, a man, again, who I'm supposed to hate. I'm a lifelong Yankees fan. Ted Williams was one of the most amazing players and Americans of all time. A lot of good baseball players were not necessarily great Americans. This guy was a different cat. He was arguably the greatest hitter in the history of the game. You can make an argument for Barry Bonds. You can make an argument for Babe Ruth, a couple of other guys. Williams is right up there in the conversation. If I had to make that argument, if I was tasked with doing that, I could win that argument. But he was not only that. During his career, he left for 4.5 years, basically, and he was a pilot in 2 wars. He was John Glenn's wingman. He became an outstanding pilot, one of the best. Everything this guy did, he did to a level of excellence. When he retired, he became a fisherman. He is literally in 2 fishermen halls of fame. So he's as good, or was as good a fisherman as he was a hitter, and he was arguably the greatest hitter of all time. He was arguably the greatest fisherman of all time. I know that sounds a little weird, but that's a thing. There's a whole world that has to do with fishermen. I am not part of that world. But here's the thing. When he spoke to Bob Costas, he said that the most important single quality is enthusiasm. Now, you're going to argue with Ted Williams when Ted Williams talks about what it takes to succeed in something? You're not going to win that argument. And enthusiasm is exactly what I love about watching and listening to these vocal coaches critique these vocal performances. The person putting on the performance is enthusiastic. The coach who's breaking it down is enthusiastic about the minutest of details. We apparently need that. We apparently need to experience the enthusiasm of other people. Maybe not always, and maybe not everyone. But there is some kind of a resonance that takes place. We do get to live vicariously. We do get to enjoy and fall in love with what that person is enjoying and falling in love with. I am a middle-aged man. Jesus, I hate to say that out loud. But I am a middle-aged man. I can't hide it. All right, no matter how much Brill cream I put on, no matter how youthful my wardrobe, middle-aged men enjoy watching and talking to younger men. Now, don't think anything weird about that. I feel like middle-aged men, older men, need that because it's such a reminder. It's the opportunity to live vicariously. Here you are jaded with more years behind than ahead. And you have this young, energetic person with their lives ahead of them. And they see the world very differently. Again, not in a jaded way. Not in a negative way. And there's something about that that is very compelling. We like that. That's why it's why we like, one of the reasons why we like babies, right? They're looking at the world with fresh eyes. Whereas we've seen everything and done everything, and it's kind of boring. And it's one of the factors that kind of causes our enthusiasm to wane. It's a chance to revive it. Right? And this is not news to some of you. We don't necessarily think of it in this way all the time. But this is something that's been going on since time immemorial. Older people like to revisit their youth and the thoughts and feelings that they had by speaking to and watching younger people. It's perfectly natural. So we understand the reason why enthusiasm works, and it's one of the most important qualities. If you don't understand it, just look at the most successful people in any endeavor. I just referenced one of them, Ted Williams, right? But you can look at any field of endeavor, be it sports, be it business, be it the arts, and what you'll see is the people at the top are the most enthusiastic. They fall in love with what they're doing. That's why they do it. Now, if you're thinking about some exceptions, you are not wrong. And we'll get into those in a minute. There are some exceptions. I think this is a key thing to understand. But there is a problem with enthusiasm, and I see it all the time with people who come into this office. Most people who come into this office and have a conversation with me and start a program are enthusiastic. They see the possibility of something new and something better happening. They get answers, right? They could see a better future. But then for many people, that enthusiasm waxes. It wanes. I don't know what waxes means in this context. I know what wanes means. I have to look up waxes and wanes. I shouldn't use words I don't fully understand. But for many people, that enthusiasm over time diminishes. Doesn't have to be a lot of time. For some people, enthusiasm just gets crushed pretty quickly. I am sometimes nervous when somebody comes in here and they are too enthusiastic, like they're putting it on, like they're psyching themselves up, like it's not real. I don't necessarily want them to be too enthusiastic, at least not in a way that I think is unsustainable. Because I've seen too many of those people who start out on a high, and tell me if you recognize this in yourself or others. They start out on this high, and then after a short time, it just goes down. So that's why I say in the title that if you have too much of it, it's not necessarily a good thing. But that is kind of simplistic of me to say. It's not about too much. It's about it being unsustainable and maybe not real from the very beginning. Because really what's needed is an unyielding enthusiasm. This is what the masters have, an unyielding enthusiasm. They still love doing at 90 what they love doing at 30, those who are capable. I've referenced Warren Buffett before. He's 94, I think. He still goes to the office every day. Okay? He doesn't need the money. His second in command is 99 and goes to the office every day, right? They love it. They love that particular game. They're still enthusiastic about it. How? How can they be like that after so many years when the rest of us aren't? I think another way to ask this question is, what kills enthusiasm? And if you think about it, it's several factors. First of all, like I said before, insincerity. An insincere type of enthusiasm, a forced type of enthusiasm. You really don't feel that way, but you know you're supposed to, where you're trying to psych yourself up. Basically, hype. Hype will kill enthusiasm. Another thing that will kill enthusiasm is failure. Now, this is a whole subject unto itself, because the people who succeed most are the ones who inevitably fail the most. Ted Williams failed 65% of his at-bats. For every 1,000 times he got to the plate, he failed 650 times, and he became the best ever. Abe Lincoln kept failing until he achieved the highest office in the land, if you can imagine that. There's a story about the Colonel Sanders from KFC, and apparently he took his recipe to over 1,000 different people to secure finances, whereas we would have stopped after 3 or 4. The more persistent amongst us might have stopped at 20. But he went to over 1,000. So this sense of unyielding enthusiasm, the people who have that, they have the keys to the kingdom. So I have to qualify it. I can't say failure will kill enthusiasm. Failure will kill enthusiasm depending generally on expectations and on the ability to renew that purpose. Okay. It's not that it goes away after some adverse events. The adverse events are the only thing that are guaranteed. If there are no adverse events, if there are no barriers, there's no fun, there's no winning, there's no game. Don't believe me? Play basketball against a 2-year-old as an adult. Okay? There's no fun, there's no game there. That's the most boring thing in the world. We need those barriers. Success will not taste sweet if there is nothing to overcome. And in anything that's worthwhile, there'll always be something to overcome. So this expectation of success, and when there's a barrier, when there's a failure, a temporary loss of purpose, that's it. That's the whole game. So we need to be a little more relentless about that, right? But how? How to capture that relentlessness? Again, we cannot assume that this quality of enthusiasm is a factor that is either there or it's not. It has to be renewed, maybe on a day-to-day basis. Okay, that purpose has to be reinvigorated from time to time. The successes that we get, more often than not, we minimize because it's not the ultimate success. Tell me if you've ever seen this game. It's called Moving the Goalposts. I see it in this office. Here's how it looks like in this office, but we can apply it towards other things. Someone loses 22 pounds in 40 days. And they're upset because they wanted to lose 25. Okay. If that same person had lost 25, they might be upset because they thought they should have lost 27. So there's this game, no matter what happens, it should be more. It's not enough. Where the hell does that come from? Where do those inner conversations come in that once they're tapped into, once we don't succeed, now that tape recording plays, I'm not good enough, I can't do it, I always fail, I always lose. Where does that come from? I don't know. I don't know exactly. I have some senses, and some people it's very obvious. There are people, as insane as it seems, who grow up with family members who think it's their job to crush dreams. You'll hear things like, it's too unrealistic. You will never make the major leagues, right? They're trying to protect us, possibly. Some are trying to do more than that. But again, it's a form of insanity when you have parents coming down on young children, on their own children, who theoretically they should be pumping up, but they're convincing them that they are losers. This will happen in a very overt way sometimes, and in a more subtle way sometimes. And then when the person makes the effort to do things and inevitably runs into a barrier, now all of those things keep coming back, all of those old stories. It keeps coming back. It's like pressing play. So ultimately, it's not even the outside criticisms that matter. It's the internalization of it. And that mechanism will happen. You'll see it. Fortunately, I feel like most parents are not doing this to children, or at least not in the overt way. The other way, like, trying to protect the child, trying to manage their expectations, that happens more. And that can lead to a kind of fragility. And I think it's probably the case that many of us have that to some degree. Maybe it's our educational system, our society that does the same thing. You have these human resources guys that tells you that you're meant to be a forest ranger, even though you want to be an attorney. The world needs ditch diggers too. I don't know where I heard that. I think that was a movie. But those things absolutely happen, right? So we have these inner conversations. They might be lying dormant while we are enthusiastic. And then as soon as we run into some kind of a wall, or we hear a comment from someone else, it taps into those inner conversations and it revives it. That can be a tough barrier to overcome. It might be the case that the internal barriers are much, much more powerful than the external ones. So these things will definitely crush enthusiasm. These are some of the mechanisms when there are forces that kind of push us down in various ways. And we give them the space and the power to affect us. It can have very bad outcomes. And this will happen. This is not an uncommon thing. This is a relatively common thing. Okay? Now, part of the problem with that whole mechanism is this, is that it takes the fun out of playing the game in the first place. Whatever game we're talking about, whatever endeavor, goal that we're trying to achieve, when the fun is zapped out of it, but yet we have to do it anyway, right? It's a big have to. So now we're doing the motions, and yet we don't have the feeling. We don't have the enthusiasm about it. Maybe there's a perception that we cannot succeed, and that's what kills it. Maybe there's a perception that it's not worth it, even if we do succeed. So that's not worth it. But we have to do it anyway. We have to go to work every day. We have to, like Fred Flintstone, we have to go down to the quarry, right? And there is something to be said about that. It's better to do that probably than just lay in bed in the fetal position. But again, it will kill enthusiasm. It will kill the larger wins. Let's go back to talking about singers for a brief minute, because two singers come to mind that I think kind of elucidate that whole subject. The first is Britney Spears. I'm not an expert on Britney Spears. I don't reference her a lot. But if you paid attention at all to any kind of cultural news, pop cultural news, you'll know that there was a whole movement to free Britney, quote unquote, free Britney. Why? Britney was under the thumb of, I think it was her dad. Legally, he was getting her money. He was completely controlling her. She had some issues, and as a result, she could not even make legal decisions. Her money was not her own. Nevertheless, she still had to work. This is a pretty recent occurrence. Now, do you think she had much enthusiasm about what she was doing? How could she? I'm pretty sure that started many, many, many years before. She was a child star. This is speculation on my part, but it's one of those things. I'm pretty sure I'm right. I'm not sure how much she wanted to do it in the first place. She probably did. She probably enjoyed aspects of it, right? But I feel like she became the breadwinner pretty early on. And I remember seeing it and being conscious of it. I saw her on a commercial and I thought, this kid's heart's not in it. She does not even want to be here. This is a paycheck. She's become a paycheck player. That does not inspire, right? I mean, that, if you could see now, did I then project and say, okay, this is going to lead to a fall? No, I wasn't thinking about that. I didn't know that she was going to crash to the degree that she did, but I definitely had that sense many, many years ago. Okay. Now, let's contrast her. And again, this is someone I don't really know much about, but I get a definite impression. Ariana Grande. The ironically named Ariana Grande, because she is quite pequeña. She's a tiny thing. Ariana Grande, when I see her, I see enthusiasm. I see love for her craft. There's a certain lightness about it. Like, she enjoys doing what she's doing. She's brilliant. She's incredibly talented. I mean, if you ever watch her, she does impersonations of other female singers. But you could see that she fell in love with the craft of singing and entertaining. And there's nothing on earth that she'd rather be doing. This is going to be sustainable. She could take her career wherever she wants. She will not be held hostage in the same way that Britney Spears has been. And by the way, I hope Britney Spears makes it. I mean, in a different way. I don't know much about how she's doing now, but this is the difference. The difference is the degree to which our enthusiasm becomes suppressed by various mechanisms, and whether or not we could sustain it or revive it when and if that happens. If and when that happens. Okay? Because we are not going to just succeed at everything we do. And if we do succeed fabulously, then it's not going to be worth it. Not on this earth. That is not how things work. We have to accept where we are and our circumstances. Okay? When you set about to lose weight, you are not going to lose 20 pounds in a week. And if you do, that is a very, very bad thing. All right. If you set about to succeed at your job, you are not going to go through with never receiving any resistance, be it from your boss, your customers, your coworkers, technology, which is probably the biggest and most confounding barrier there is these days at work. But the biggest and most confounding barrier there is to achieving what you want is time. Because it's like I'm saying, it doesn't just take enthusiasm, it takes unyielding, unrelenting enthusiasm. In other words, enthusiasm over time. That is the key. If you've got that, you've got everything. And that's what the masters have and why they are masters. And these people that I reference from these disparate fields, Ted Williams in baseball, Ariana Grande, who I think is there. I don't even know. I don't know that much about that type of music. Warren Buffett, Magic Johnson, a guy whose enthusiasm has never waned. I mean, he had AIDS, for God's sakes. And all he's done after his basketball career was become a billionaire through business because of that unyielding enthusiasm that he's been able to maintain. All right, listen, I could talk more, but I hope this was some good food for thought. Feel free to contact me with any suggestions or thoughts that you have. I hope this was useful. I believe it is. Meditate on it for the week. Next week is going to be a couple of days before the 4th. I think I'm going to be going live then. Not sure about the week after. I'm setting up some conversations with some people who are much smarter than me. I do that for a reason, because I like to learn. I get enthusiastic about learning. I am not enthusiastic about studying, which is one of the ways I hold myself hostage. I am the Britney Spears of knowledge. So the way I get around that is I try to speak to people who know more than me and just kind of pump their brains for information. So that is my goal over the next couple of weeks. And I will see everybody on the other side. Take care.